knows nothing.
Hi, this is Debbie Diller coming to you live on Facebook Live for the very first time. Sorry we're a little bit late in getting started. Big storm here in Houston all of a sudden, and traffic was all jammed up. But everything's looking great. So welcome to this first session. And our focus today, I tried to write it on a piece of paper, but I think it's coming out backwards. Our focus is going to be, what can I do to get ready for math stations before school starts?
Yeah, that's perfect.
This is something that you asked for. My friend Kelly is here with me so she can find out who is tuning in right now. Hopefully some people are able to find this and join us for this little bit of time together. Kelly, is the print backwards?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I tried. Anyway, I'm here at my house in Houston. School's getting ready to start in about 3 weeks, I think, and everybody's kind of thinking about what can I do to get ready. So this will be my 41st year of starting the new school year. I'm very excited about working in some classrooms and working across the country with teachers in their classrooms, getting this going. So is there anybody on here yet? No? No. We're still kind of waiting to see if anybody's joining us. So Kelly's kind of standing by, and I know some of you will probably be watching this at a later time as well. So welcome to those of you that are joining us after the broadcast. We are going to be getting into... Yeah, she can't see who you are. So anyway, I know you're out there. Hi, I'd like to call you by name. Oh, there's somebody. Mary Carmen, hi. Great to see you too. Your name just came up on my screen somehow. So thank you for bearing with me while I figure out how to do this. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about what to do to get ready for math stations before school starts. So there are a couple of main points. The very first one I want to talk about is thinking about your space. It's all anyone is thinking about now anyway, probably. And so if you think about where you want to have your math station set up, what I recommend is to find a small space in your room that's easily accessible to your kids. And I like to use clear plastic containers with numbers on them so that the students can actually see them and find those numbers. So what you can do now is you can get some containers ready. I really have found better success with putting kids in pairs rather than groups of 4 or 5 kids at a station. So you'll have to do some math here. How many kids you think you're going to have in your classroom. Divide that by 2. That's the number of containers you'll want to have. Number those containers and then number spaces around the room. Hi Tara, I see you're on here, and I see Debbie Jane. Yay, you're seeing it. Yay, I'm happy. I might be repeating myself a few times just because I know people are probably just coming on board. So thanks for being patient. Hi Heather again. And so what we're going to be really thinking about at the beginning of the year is that space. So one spot in the room to put all of your portable stations for that first round. Now, when I look at getting them started, you're going to only introduce one at a time. So you don't have to have all those containers all filled up with stuff. Just kind of have a space kind of figured out. The other thing to do is I like to number spaces around the room that will be corresponding places for kids to take stations. So if you just get some sticky notes, is an easy way to do this. Get some sticky notes, number them the same amount of numbers that you're going to have, and just put those numbered Post-it notes around the room so they're kind of spaced out so kids won't be on top of each other. Then you can have your space figured out for when the children do come. So the very first thing would be just thinking about the space and where you're going to put stations. Imagining a lot of you are probably primary teachers, and you probably have, you're probably self-contained, and so you have literacy and math stations. In that case, what you'd want to do is take those literacy station spaces and double those up as math stations as well. So that's a good way to just kind of save space. So that's the very first big thing I do, is look at where I'm going to put them. The second thing I would think about with math stations is getting math manipulatives organized. How many of you have one of those closets that when you open them up, you want to like run the other way and go, there's too much stuff in here. I can't even get the door shut. So I'm in my office right now, which I have just recently cleaned out. You can't really see it, but I have like all these cabinets and stuff. I'm gonna like show them around here, Kelly. There's, yeah, don't show you, I won't. Anyway, there's like, I have all these built-in cabinets and stuff all over the place, and I just recently cleaned them out and got rid of a whole bunch of stuff. And I have to tell you, it was extremely freeing to do that, to not have all that stuff to have to deal with anymore. So what I'm thinking about is just really, thanks, Tara, yeah, using the tips I have, especially in spaces and places, getting those, organizing your storage spaces is going to be important so you know what you have. Hi, Colleen. Good to see you or hear you. Know you're here. Hi, Chris from Colorado. Oh, I've been out there. Great place. Lucky you in the cool weather. So I, when I'm looking at getting organized, that would be the big thing to do now. You don't ever have the time like you're going to have early in the school year to get everything set up and organized. So what I do typically is I go into a space and I just pull things out, pull everything out and just start sorting it. And as you're sorting it, there's a formula I use. It's just SPACE, space. It came from a fabulous lady named Julie Morgenstern a number of years ago in her book, Organizing from the Inside Out. And Julie talks about S as being sort. So that's, to me, one of the really big things we want to do is sort our stuff out. And as you're pulling it out, just, hi Karen, I see you're on board too. Glad to have you here. As you're pulling your things out of your cabinet, starting with S, sorting, sort them into categories. Think about your math standards. Think about your big ideas for math. And as you're thinking about those big ideas for math, for example, if I were a kindergarten teacher, which I was in the past, I would think about numbers. Number sense is going to be a big thing. So anything with numbers and counting, especially early in kindergarten. So as you're pulling things out, put all your counting stuff in one area. And I just usually put like a piece of paper, I write counting on it, and just put that on the floor. Another space that I might have is something relating to geometry as I'm pulling all the stuff out. Put things for geometry on that space that says geometry. Just pull, pull, pull. So that's sorting. As you're sorting, do P, which is purging. It's really hard to do. I had Kelly help me clean up my office because it's too hard for even me to do, and I've written about this. So when you're getting organized, organizing math manipulatives, do not do this as alone. It's too hard to do by yourself. Okay, so as you're working, oh, hi, Carol from Staunton, Virginia. I've been there years ago. Glad to see you here with us today, too. And Michelle, hey, Michelle. We used to teach together. Good to see you as well. So we're talking about space and getting our math manipulatives organized. So S being sort, P being purge. Probably one of the hardest things to do is to get rid of stuff. Ask yourself honestly, have I used this lately? And do I really need 30 decks of playing cards? Because every time I go to the dollar store, I buy another card deck because I just forgot that I even had all those cards already. Same with dice and all the other things. So, or maybe there's things that you don't even use at your grade level. So there, get rid of some of that stuff. Give it to somebody else or sometimes just donate it. All right, that's S and P. A is assign a home. Decide where you're going to put things that are logical and organized. And then again, if you have a friend there with you, somebody to think about doing this, it's going to be a whole lot easier. I'm reading some of your comments coming in. It's great to have all of you here. Lots of places I've been and visited, so very nice to see all my friends coming from all around the country. Awesome. Probably some people even maybe from other places going to be joining us. Lee and Jennifer, I just saw you just came on too, so welcome. So as you are assigning a home, think about that logical and safe bit. And then C is my absolute favorite thing. That is when we're going to containerize. So putting things in containers is going to be really helpful for you just throughout the school year. I like to put a label on the container. When I am labeling, I am not using a label maker. I'm not doing anything fancy. I am using my good old Sharpie pen. I just borrowed it from Kelly. Just a Sharpie and some sticky labels and just labeling what's in those containers. Just makes it a whole lot easier. So that would be containerizing. Now, when you put things in containers, make sure they actually fit in the container. Don't put them in like, don't have like this container that's half empty because you're going to be wasting space. The final thing is E, equalizing. And equalizing is making sure you actually put things away at the end of the day. And you could also get your kids to help you because you don't have to do it all by yourself. I'm all about growing independence. So that would be the second thing I would do. First thing, looking at where am I going to put my stations, setting that space up. Secondly, thinking about getting your math manipulatives organized. Now, if you want some more help on these ideas, the book Math Workstations that I've written for Stenhouse Publishers, I'm going to have Kelly grab me a copy so I can hold it up to show you. We've got lots of copies here. So nice to have a friend helping right now. And so what we're going to be doing is just thinking about that Math Workstations book has a chapter on getting all your math manipulatives organized. If you are familiar with the book Spaces and Places, that will also help you just with organization in general. So helpful thing to have. The third thing I would do to get ready for math stations before school starts is I would really be digging into what do I need to be teaching for those first probably 4 to 6 weeks. Don't be looking at the whole year. That's way too far in the forecast. Just think about this first few weeks of school, probably the first month or so. When you're thinking about your first month, think about what are some things from the prior grade level that my kids already can do. And I would look at starting to make plans for stations, and especially not just stations, but also instruction. Think about, how am I going to teach in whole group? How am I going to teach math this year? Are there some new things I want to try? Be really getting those at the forefront of your brain right now, rather than just focusing on a station, thinking about what I'm going to teach. So when you're planning for those first stations, thinking about what kids can do, what is coming from the year prior. If you have kindergarten or pre-K, they might not have gone to pre-K or a 3-year-old program before they come into 4s. So think about, again, my big message is, what can they do? Always important to focus on. As you're thinking about planning for stations, think first of all, what are my standards? I always encourage people to actually look up their standards. One of my favorite ways to do that, if you go online, or go on your phone, go on your smart device, and look up whatever your state standards are. I'm in Texas, so I'd look up the TEKS. There's an app for that. It's just the TEKS app. If you're in a Common Core state, put in Common Core app and it'll come up. Actually, you can do it for any state that you are living in. So I use that app, or I have a paper copy, or you can go online and look at your standards. I actually physically write out the standard so I can look at it in its entirety. I don't just abbreviate it. I don't say counting to 20. I look at specifically what do those standards say. I then think about the academic vocabulary that I want to use and I want my kids to use too. When I'm thinking about that, I might create a conversation card that I'm going to be using in those first few weeks of school. If I'm in first grade and we're working on making 10, it might be blank and blank equals 10. And I'll be using that over and over again. So instead of thinking about putting your time into what are my stations going to be, what can I make ahead, what can I buy ahead, don't go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, it's not really a big need for that. Instead, look at what you already have after you get organized. Think about your standards, what you're teaching. Oh, and I forgot to mention, don't do this alone. Do it with somebody. Do it with a friend. Get together with them and sit down for maybe a couple hours and look at what is it that we are going to be doing together as a grade level team. And so use your standards to guide you. Think about your academic vocabulary and then start to plan out how we're going to do this in whole group. If I am a kindergarten or first grade teacher, I'm going to start out just with some manipulatives and really getting kids to kind of be able to play. Oops, my sister is calling me right now. I hope that's not up on the screen. Sorry, I tried to turn all that stuff off. It didn't come up. Hi, sister. She's on her way home from work. She's calling to say hi. Sorry about that. I got a little distracted. It is my first time doing this, so please be patient with me. But as I'm looking in kindergarten and first grade especially, I would do some things with manipulatives just to give kids a chance to be working with those, kind of playing with them. They're going to play with them anyway and doing it in a controlled kind of a way. I like to use math mats. I use shelf liner that you can get at the dollar store or Target or Walmart and those places. Cut it in pieces, that are probably about like this big enough for the kids to work on, and have them explore some math manipulatives. Think about what you're going to be doing in whole group instruction as well. And then think, what can I have my kids do in pairs using manipulatives, even if they're just working together to build something? That's what I can move into my first stations. So I'm going to beseech you, please read professionally. One of my personal things right now is to make sure, this is probably going to look backwards, but this is the Math Workstations book with a backwards cover right now, but you get the gist of it. But read professionally and find out some really great ways to teach math. I would really spend my time doing that right now. I would not be going online and trying to find like pre-made centers and that kind of thing. I think you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck if you really sit down with your colleagues and you plan together and you think about, how can we teach this together? I'm a huge fan of John Vanderwall. I have John Vanderwall's books. I have used those as resources just to figure out how to teach math to young kids or to older kids too. I'm a huge Kathy Richardson fan. I use a lot of her work, and there's just lots of good stuff out there. So I hope those are some things that can be helpful to you. Now, I know that a lot of you are online, and so I thought that we'd take a few minutes maybe for some questions. If anybody has a question about getting started with math stations at the beginning of the year. So I'm going to have Kelly here helping me to see if anybody has a question that you want to post. And I can see some things on the screen. Thank you for telling me about the books that have helped you. They've been very exciting for me to work on as well. Any questions coming up yet?
Somebody wants to know how they can rewatch this later.
Oh, how can you rewatch it later? I have no idea. I really don't. I'll be finding out too. Supposedly, I've been told that this just gets recorded, and when I get off, it saves it. So I'll do some research after we're all finished, and I'll put a post up on my Facebook page of how to watch it. If if you haven't figured it out, you may figure it out before I do, but we'll work on that and see what we can do.
How soon do you begin to introduce stations?
Okay, how soon do you begin to introduce stations at the beginning of the year? In math stations, I would say if you're a kindergarten or first grade teacher, I have something I call exploration stations. Exploration stations is they're really just kind of working with manipulatives with a partner for probably a few weeks. It might be a couple of weeks before you really start introducing something more formalized to put into those math stations. And if you want more information on that, that is in the Math Workstations book, and I did a training on this yesterday. I'm trying to remember the chapter. It's chapter 3, Getting Started with Math Workstations, which will go into it in its entirety. If I were teaching second grade and up, I would start with a partner game, so that's something I would do ahead of time. I would thinking about a partner game that I can teach the entire class the first couple of days of school, and we would just play that same partner game probably for several days in a row. Then I'd think of another partner game I could teach them related to what they already know and can do, as well as what my standards are. And then I would layer that one on next. So then we'd have half the kids play this partner game and the other half play another partner game. It's probably going to take you, a good, I'd say 4 weeks or so of school to get this up and running before you can start to pull small groups. So hope that answers that question.
And how long would you do stations in kindergarten?
Okay, in kindergarten, how long would stations last? Probably at the beginning of the year, it might be 10 minutes a piece or so. One thing I learned is quit while you're ahead. Don't let the kids stay there too long, because if they do, you're going to end up having a nightmare on your hands. I would not be sitting at the table doing testing or anything during this time. I would actually be right there with the children at the stations. I'd be walking around. I personally would have a clipboard with note cards on it, and I would be taking notes about what I noticed the kids can do mathematically. I'd be listening to their talk. I'd be talking with them. How did you do that? Tell me about what your thinking is, etc., and getting to know the kids as mathematicians.
During the first few weeks when you're teaching procedures, how many do you introduce?
So when you're in your first few weeks, Kelly's kind of feeding me your questions as we go here. Sorry about the lag in time. So as we think about those first few weeks of school, and now I've already forgotten what the question was.
When you're teaching procedures?
When you're teaching procedures, okay, when you're teaching procedures and you're introducing your stations, I would introduce never ever more than one station per day, okay? One a day is plenty. I made the mistake when I was teaching first grade. I was one of those ambitious people, and I was like, I want to get this started fast. So I think, maybe I'll introduce 2 a day or 3 a day. wrong. That was a really bad idea. So one station at a time. And again, it may not be one new one every day. It might be one every several days. There's no magic way to do this. Watch your kids and they will really show you what they need next. But slow and steady wins the race here.
What would be a good first homemade class big book to make for kindergarten math?
All right, so for kindergarten math, a good first class-made big book. I hope to do something on this like in the future. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm thinking a lot about doing this. A first class book that I made for kindergarten, a big book, was a counting book. Well, actually, no, there's two ideas I have. Let me do the first one. The very first one we did was we looked for numbers around the school. And we went on kind of a field trip around the school. I took along my camera at the time. Today, with iPads, if you have one-on-one iPads, you could do that the first week of school. You could have your kids be taking pictures. So one thing I always have to remind myself of is, Deb, you don't have to do this by yourself. The kids can help you too. So I get the children to help possibly to take pictures of places around the places around the school where we see numerals. I remember doing this with the class one time, and for example, we went past the nurse's office and we took a picture of some numbers that were in the nurse's office. We went past the cafeteria and there were some numbers around the cafeteria. So we just took pictures of numerals, and then the big book, the text was, I see numbers in the blank. So for example, I see numbers in the cafeteria. I see numbers, sorry, another call coming in. I see numbers in the gym. I see numbers in the hall. I see numbers on the wall. Trying to keep a pretty repetitive pattern, but that's a really good one to start with. And then put photos into your big book. I just use the large 12 by 18 construction paper for that, usually manila paper or white. The other big book that I like making at the beginning of the year is a counting book. And I like to have children in it and just have just the number 1 and have one child. And then have the numeral 2 and then have a picture of 2 of your children. Have the numeral 3 and pictures of 3 of your children. And just if your goal is counting to 20, which a lot of times it is in kindergarten, depending on where you are, I would add the page 0 also. I'd have 0 be the first one with nobody on it, because 0 is a very difficult concept for young children to grasp. So I hope that'll give you a few ideas for some big books.
How do you handle absent kids?
Well, I'm not going to answer every single thing about stations right now, but absenteeism happens, and you're going to get newcomers throughout the year too. So the way you handle absences is, you know what, if they're not here, they're not here. You know, they've missed the whole day of instruction, as well as they are missing some time to practice at that station. I'm not trying to get all the kids through all the stations within a week. I could care less if they're all going there within a week. It really is not important. What's important is that our children's needs are being met. So if they miss a station, they miss a station. That's just life.
And can you make trios work?
Can you make trios work? I don't like trios. I really feel that the whole choose company, three's a crowd thing is a very true statement in life in many, many ways, including stations. Sometimes if you have an odd number of kids, you might have to put 3 together, but I see such greater engagement of students in pairs that I really, really recommend pairs over a group of 3. Sometimes you have to have a kid work alone, and that happens. Sometimes kids just have a day where they have to work by themselves.
Once time has gone by, what's the maximum number of stations you'd like to run?
Once time has gone by, what's the maximum number of stations I'd like to run? I don't have a magic number. I like numbers. This is about math, but I don't think there's a magic number. You can duplicate stations. So people get real hung up on how many do you have to have. You just have to have things that are going to meet the needs of kids. And I like to have a variety of things going on at once so that children can have spiral review for things that you've already taught. So I'm not taking things that I've just taught today and having all my stations match that right away. So I think we have time probably for maybe one more question, and then I'm going to sign off for now. So see if there's maybe one more question.
Well, this is basic. Centers are for added practice, correct?
Stations are for additional practice. They are practice for things you've already taught. I'll give you my definition of math stations to close out our session. Probably should have started with that. But my latest version of how I'm defining math stations is this. Math stations is partner practice used with kids using familiar materials and working on familiar tasks on things they can do. So I wish you guys a great beginning of your school year. I'd love to see you post up some pictures on Facebook of the things that you are trying in your classroom. And I really appreciate your joining me and being with me on this very first Facebook Live session. I'm sure that it'll go a little bit smoother as time goes by. And Kelly has one more thing she wants to tell me.
Somebody mentioned that you could save the video.
You can save it, okay.
At the top, it's on my phone.
Okay, and you know what? I hate to tell you this, but I have like this light case on my phone right now that I'm using so that it's lit up a little bit better because it's really dark and gloomy here today. And so I can't really see it, but I promise you before I tune out, I will hit, Kelly's showing me on her phone what that looks like. So
click that arrow.
Yeah, I just have to find it.
And
I
then
can't see it right now.
Option to save.
Okay. There's a thing that says finish, so after I push the finish button, I can see that I'm not totally blinded. After I push finish, I will push the save button. So thank you for that advice. I appreciate it. And again, thank you guys for joining me. I love having the opportunity to interact with you. Please check out Math Workstations, the book. There's also a video I've done called Moving into Math Stations that's awesome and is available. It's a streaming thing. Go to my website, DebbieDiller.com, or go to Stenhouse Publishers, stenhouse.com for more information on that. And again, you guys have a great rest of your summer, whatever's left, and thanks for joining me. It was great having you here with me on this first time. Thanks.